we shift to the running backs a little bit, I think the top three all warrant. Actually, I'm going to talk about the kind of the fourth one first. Duke Johnson looked really good in the passing game in the scrimmage from a route running standpoint, timing, deception. I was very, happy to see him moving well as a, former U guy. It was nice to see him. Yeah, rocking the U always. He looked good. I don't think we're going to focus on him too much, but I mean, we'll probably see a decent amount of him come preseason game one. And he looked good from a route running perspective. None of the running backs have had a great performance running the ball in camp, especially at the scrimmage, but Johnson looked good from a route running perspective in the scrimmage. But let's start top down from the perceived depth chart that we kind of have in our heads, but also that was not even potentially leaked, but that was released yesterday, I believe. So we've got RB1, which is Devin Singletary. Kendall, Singletary for you, stock up, stock down, no change. What do you got?
I'd say level. I'd say no change. I think he's even on course with what's to be expected. He's not making splash plays every single practice, but he's doing what's expected of him. And sometimes more. He's not necessarily being not dependable. You're not seeing that side of things, but you're just seeing really level play. And that's what you want to see from someone like Devin Singletary. That's exactly what you expect from him. And when you get what you're expecting, that's dependability. And he's been available as well. And that's a huge part for running backs. Obviously, we know how the tires can just kind of wear off at a certain point. Being dependable at this position is absolutely huge, even with the depth that we have. And you already went all the way down to Duke Johnson. So I think for me, Devin Singletary has just been even level play.
And I feel like I feel like people think it's like a disrespectful thing to like label him as that. I agree. And no, it's not, especially when you have, I talked about it when I went deep into the running backs and the run game on Disguised Coverage last week. Like Devin Singletary, his you and I were talking about this in the DMs. His ability to break tackles and make people miss on a per carry basis is elite. He's like top three in the league amongst running backs. It's fantastic. Wild. So maybe that I did not expect that. So maybe from that perspective, that's a plus matchup that he has. But overall, he doesn't really have any plus matchups or plus traits, but he also doesn't really have anything that he's deficient at. If you're scale of 1 to 10, pretty much everything for a running back, Devin Singletary is like at worst like a 6.5, or he's like a 7.5, which is good when you have Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis and Dawson Knox and good offensive linemen at certain points. Like you've got all these other plus matchups. Having someone who's dependable and reliable is a good thing. You can't have stars anywhere. You can't have studs everywhere. That doesn't happen. Having a good, reliable, steady performer at any position is a good thing, especially on a team where you've got a lot of plus matchups and plus players in a bunch of other positions like the Bills do. So I've been fine with Singletary. I don't think he showed anything that made me go, wow, this guy's transcending into a top 10 back in the league. And I also don't think he showed anything that was like, oh man, he's going to lose a ton of touches. I think it's been status quo, which is he's going to be the main ball carrier to start the year based on how he finished last year. I don't think he's shown anything to kind of wane or wean us off that track or that path. So same, I'm in that kind of even keel neutral plane. James Cook, I struggled on this one because for what he's valued as, that sub-package back, I think his stock is up. We are seeing him, he's naturally translating and transitioning his game from college to the NFL. We are seeing him be able to understand leverage, be able to understand coverage. We're seeing him win against second teamers, third teamers, first teamers. He's getting work with the first team at the scrimmage. We saw Devin Singletary. It was funny. All three running backs got work with the first team a lot, and it was in the standard way. Like Singletary got the majority of, touches or snaps, not touches, snaps. Cook came in on third downs. And then when the Bills got inside the 10, it was the Zack Moss show. And that's something very interesting for another time. We'll probably talk about post game, which is a fun little tidbit that I also haven't mentioned since everybody's here. Kendall and I will be doing a live post-game show on Disguised Coverage immediately following the Bills preseason game Saturday, so make sure you tune into that. But I digress. Don't want to tangent too much. I think from a receiving standpoint, Cook has been as advertised. I still want to see what he looks like as a runner, but I don't think we're going to see that until we get live action. The reason I'm not fully committing to a stock trending up for him, I posted one of the clips of him getting waxed by Terrell Bernard on a blitz in that scrimmage. I think there are fair questions for his pass protection that still remain right now. And it's just like what we talked about when we broke him down multiple times when the Bills drafted him. he makes the right read. He understands the protection. He understands who's coming, where to meet them. He just doesn't always win at the point of attack. And that's super unfortunate because he's doing everything right mentally. And I don't even think it's so much of a technique thing as it is a frame thing. He's just not, I just don't think he's built to be the nail and pick up a blitzing linebacker who's trying to be the hammer. That's the only reason I'm not fully committing to a stock up riser for James Cook. But I think in a lot of ways, he's been the plus matchup in the pass game that we have hoped for. You're seeing him get motioned out of the backfield and lining up in the slot. He's lining up out wide. He's running routes out of the backfield. He's open in the flats, and he's taking advantage of that no cover zone area and that space that the defense is either willingly or accidentally giving up. You're seeing him take advantage of that space and win against NFL talent in very similar ways to how we won at Georgia. So his receiving ability is real. It's translating very well. We still need to see what he looks like as a runner. And I think there's fair questions still about his pass protection. Like we've talked about multiple times, if he can't holistically not be deficient as a pass protector, it starts to limit what you can do with him overall, because it starts to become a tendency giveaway and a potential weakness or vulnerability. So that's the only reason I'm not fully, trending upwards. But I think there's a lot to like with him, and I'm very excited to see him on Saturday. He's one that I am watching for big time.
Oh, yeah, big time. Hopefully he gets enough to actually evaluate him in that game, specifically in the run game, like you were saying. But yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I have him right on that cusp of just like really even level with my expectations from, the draft process to just close to breaking that cusp into stock up. He's close because in my eyes, everything I evaluated for his draft profile, I feel like he has completely fit that bill so far in training camp. There hasn't been anything where it's like, oh, he's worse than what I thought. He's really exactly where I thought he was. And it's really great to hear that he's translating, like you said, in the pass game. That is huge. And that's the main thing pulling me to say his stock is up. But not necessarily in a vacuum because of who he is as a player. But if you extrapolate it out to how that affects the Bills offense, that like ultimately shoots the Bills offense stock up because he adds that element and obviously the speed as well. So when you isolate it into a vacuum, just James Cook, is he as a player, is he better than what was advertised? I don't think so. I think he's on track and he shows a lot of promise. So I think that is encouraging. But yes, like Ant said, things to watch for the game with James Cook, how he's running in zone versus gap schemes in that game, if he's even getting a chance in either or just one, and then the pass blocking. You want to see him execute those three phases. Can he do all three? Is he limited to just one type of run scheme? Can he sufficiently hold down a linebacker blitzing? Those kind of things. If we can see him check those boxes even against twos or threes, it's a big step and it'll be encouraging.
I think that's spot on and very accurate. We've got two Zack Moss related questions, which I'm going to pull up after we speak on Zack Moss. Ken, I'll let you go first because he is your prince.
He is the prince that was promised from Utah. I reside in his homelands. Well, college lands. You can't tell, of course.
Yeah, no, right? Everybody should be able to tell the angle of the light plus your background.
Right? Like you can't tell from the sunset angle here. Like
people don't know geography. People don't read books anymore. That's the problem.
The shadows from the mountains right there.
People don't get it. I can tell you're right by the front of the mountains. Yeah, easy to see. What do you think about your boy Zack Moss? Stock up, stock down, status quo? Because you're and actually, I'll pull in one of these comments, and then we'll get to Michael's in a minute. Because John's comment here, and Kendall, this is something that we've talked about. You pulled this quote several episodes or months ago, saying, John says, keep in mind that Zack Moss was hurt all last year. Bean mentioned his left ? Foot injury really impacted him. We heard Brandon Bean say that Moss was recovering from that ankle injury that he suffered against the Colts in the wild card round the season before. And he didn't really heal in the way they wanted him to, or he wanted to. And he, by like early in the year, he couldn't really cut off one entire side of his body. Like he couldn't plant and execute. Bean was very particular with that. So keeping that in mind, I think shines a light on his performance last year. As we come into this year, what do you think for him right now? Stock up, stock down, regular, Prince? no prince, no crown.
And no crown at all. No, so for me, I'd say personally, I think he's even. I think he's on track with my expectations. I've heard that he's been having good camps. He's looked sharp. He's been with the ones mixed in as like the 1B kind
He's
of
showing some
character.
burst.
Exactly. He's showing bursts. He's showing that he can cut off that foot. He's showing in and out of his breaks that he can be quick. We know he doesn't have the long speed, but if he has that burst and short area quickness, in a phone booth, all of that stuff, that's what you want to see from Zack Moss because that's his game. That and then obviously adding the power element. And obviously he's still been holding up on little dump offs from Josh Allen. I keep reading that he's just getting open for Josh Allen. We've talked about that so many times, how QB friendly
People
he is.
don't know about
They don't see it.
He's so good.
He's deceptively QB friendly.
He's supposed to be in the block and then no one comes and he's like, okay, I'm just going to release out. And he's always open. He gets himself open. He finds the space and coverage. He's good at
just
leveraging
slips
space
out
every time.
He's
people should know that
it.
because he's had several receiving touchdowns because of that. He just slips out and then makes a play, makes a guy miss and scores. Continue. Sorry, I feel strongly about this.
So no, you're good. I mean, it's we've been getting heated about it all off season because this is where I was going. For me personally, I think his stock is even because he's on par with my expectations. However, for Bills Mafia, I think his stock is up. I think most of Bills Mafia wrote him off and they were like, all right, this dude's probably getting cut because we drafted
They set the
James
bar
Cook.
so low.
Exactly. And because of that, you see the reports coming from camp. Oh, stock is way up. Zack Moss could take the role from Singletary. And it's like, no, we got to find the middle. We got to pump the brakes and find the middle in between that and calibrate a little bit. So I think he's on par with, what we saw from him in that promising rookie year. He's still ascending off of that, with the peaks and valleys from the injuries and all.
Yep.
So I think this is really this preseason and ideally that second game, we'll be able to see a lot from him and how sharp he really is and how healthy he really is because his skill set is holistic. It's very Singletary-like where there's a lot of good and average skills in his skill set. He doesn't necessarily show a full-on, I guess, long speed, full-on weakness. But outside of that, like he's just a very well-rounded running back, and I think he's on par to have a good preseason.
I'm gonna pull this comment. You saw what I tweeted at you earlier with the Tesla stuff?
Yeah,
this is fantastic with Steven saying, sorry, I'm late, lads. I actually stopped by the Tesla website to see who kind of was mentioning.
Just showed up in like cast, like mummified.
Fantastic. I saw that and I don't know. My brain immediately went, this is going to be a Kendall tweet. I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. I love this comment here from Michael saying that Moss's ability to find space for dump downs might be the biggest underrated ability in the entire running back room. I think I agree from an underrated standpoint. I think people see Zack Moss as either like a thumper, hammer running back or bowling ball kind of guy. And that's it. People don't recognize that, again, his ability to find space and leverage space and get open, it's consistent. He's done it in the regular season, 4 touchdowns, especially in the red zone. It's very valuable. And I think with Zack Moss, we've gotten to the point where I think he's up there with like how he polarizes, how polarizing he is. I think you've got a lot of people that are like, oh no, he just needs a chance. And other people that have, to your point you mentioned earlier, have completely written him off. And this is where I wanted to bring this comment from Michael. So, I mentioned Zack Moss got a lot of that red zone work, and I posted something about Zack Moss, and a couple of people responded and were just like, oh, well, he got stuffed on every single goal line carry. Like, he's not good. He's not ready, this and that. And Michael's question here is, was Moss getting stuffed because of him or the makeshift first team O-line? I just think it's funny how people, when they don't like someone, they find a way to like holistically blame them for everything. So it was like, he was getting stuffed at the goal line. And I was like, well, what about the offensive line? Like, and it was like, no, it's him. And I was like, that's a bold take to blame the running back solely for everything that happened on a run.
Not an independent position.
No, not at all. And, Michael, to answer your question, I think it, as it always is, I think it's partially on the running back, partially on the offensive line. But I will say on those goal line carries, there was crazy penetration from the defense. The offense, first team, second team, third team as a whole in the scrimmage did not run the ball well. And we're going to talk about it when it gets to the O-line. We're at a certain point where I hope the defensive line is amazing because they're winning so much that it's either they're amazing or the offensive line is terrible and can't execute at certain in certain platitudes and certain functions. But I think, yeah, the stuffing at the goal line, I'm not going to completely, make Moss blameless, but there was a lot of penetration. I'm talking like before he even gets the ball from Allen, as the ball's getting put into
Yeah,
his
there's
gut,
already
there's
someone
already
in the backfield.
penetration a yard or two into the backfield. And
Yeah.
it's hard to do anything in short yardage situations when you're in that spot. But
Mhm.
Moss, for me, I'm in a similar boat. I would trend towards stock up, but this is what I expected from him. I said it, I
Right.
tweeted it during the scrimmage, not to write him off. I think he could be trade bait for a team, or
Sure, yeah.
I keep mentioning it, like Ken Dorsey just seems so matchup focused, and he wants
Mm.
to turn up dials and turn down dials from play to play, drive to drive, series to series, game to game. And because Moss and Cook and Singletary all give you a little something different, I think it's realistic to think that all three make this team. I don't know if all three are going to dress on a week to week basis, but I think you could see weeks where maybe Cook sits or Moss sits. I think Singletary is probably the safest, but I don't think it's crazy to think that Zack Moss gets some meaningful snaps. Or again, the very first series I thought was very interesting. Singletary is getting the ball between the 20s, and Cook is coming in on second and long and third downs. And then when they get into the tens, it's Moss.
Yeah.
Again, we've talked about so much. Tywan Jones is like running back 3 from a roster standpoint, but he plays special teams. The Bills don't dress more than 2 running backs traditionally, yada, yada. Maybe it's different under Ken Dorsey. Maybe he wants to use all 3. Again, it gives you a nice little matchup piece and a rock, paper, scissors component in game, not even just opponent to opponent, week to week. It gives you that rock, paper, scissors ability, drive to drive, series to series, quarter to quarter, however you choose to, break it down. But I think he looks healthy. You've seen more burst. He had a couple receptions where he really got to show that he got into the open field and kind of just took off. Well, took off from him. He's not somebody who's going to be, 60 yards on a cloud of dust, but he showed some burst. He looks healthy. I think he's still got some pop left in him. And now that he's healthy, we'll see what he can be. I have a stock up for him as well. I think this running back group, while it doesn't have any one dominant, strong RB1 that's going to knock your socks off, all of them at this point have a nice plus matchup or trait, or again, if you use them sparingly and not interchangeably, but if you use them in rotation, all of them, complement one another. And if you merged all of them into one player, they'd be the best running back in the world, like, right? Because they have everything. But I think his stock is up as well. And I think it's either he gets traded or he gets used. Like, and someone might be like, well, of course, but no, I don't think he sits a ton.
Well, he was a healthy scratch, a lot. So I don't think that's in the cards for this season, obviously barring injury and all that stuff.
Dorsey is going to be very, very interesting. And I see the comment here by chance saying no team is going to trade for Moss. He legitimately has no value. Look at the
running back on a rookie deal.
Running back on a rookie deal for a team who needs a back, and they'll give up a 5th, or probably not a 5th, maybe like a 6th or a 7th. We saw Brandon Beane get value for Daryl Johnson just because he was good at special teams. Like, you see, and there's tons of other moves that Beane has made as well. I'll never say like I don't want to deal in an absolute like that, but yeah, a running back who's shown some ability, who's a year removed from a pretty good rookie season, who is better than people realize he is. You never know. Ooh. Dobbs with a nice comment here. Moss has better catching skills than Singletary, but Singletary has closed the gap. I agree. And I also say this, Zack Moss is the best pass protector out of all 3 running backs.
Yes.
And easy. I think that's, hands down. I think that's easy as well.